Good afternoon, all of you. Actually, the theme of the symposium today is Challenges of Post-Conflict Sri Lanka. Under this theme, I'm going to discuss with you today rehabilitation of child soldiers in post-conflict situation in Sri Lanka. Actually, all of you know about Sri Lanka had experienced a pathetic situation of internal conflict between the government, forces and armed group, which was the LTTE more than 2 decades. 2 years after the end of it, there are some issues that need to be addressed. According to my opinion, end of the war brought to negative peace. Therefore, for the purpose of positive peace, it is necessary to overcome many issues such as resettlement of IDPs, rehabilitation of child soldiers, ensure economic opportunities for war victims, etc. Actually, among others, children have been seriously affected by the armed conflict. Specifically, most of the children who were living in war-affected areas had to join with LTTE armed group. That's why the rehabilitation of ex-child soldiers in the post-conflict situation has become a vital issue. These are the issues that I'm going to discuss with you today. Can existing process of rehabilitation of child soldiers be considered as satisfactory one? Is this process achieving its objectives? Does the rehabilitation of child soldiers process meet the standards of IHL, it means International Humanitarian Law, and other international standards? What are the possible recommendations for more effective rehabilitation process? Then I come to before these issues, I would like to define who is a child soldier. According to the definition of United Nations, a child soldier is any person under 18 years of age who is a part of any kind of regular or irregular armed force or armed group acting in any capacity, including but not limited to cooks, porters, messengers, and anyone accompanying such groups. But a broad definition of a child soldier was declared in the Cape Town Principles and Best Practices in 1997. According to that, any person under 18 years of age who is a part of any kind of regular or irregular armed force or armed group acting in any capacity, including but not limited to cooks, porters, messengers, and those accompanying such groups other than purely as family member. It includes girls recruited for sexual purposes and for marriage. It does not only refer to a child who is carrying or has carried arms. This definition is very important. That's why I cited here, because this has included a special protection on girl child soldiers. Then I would like to come to the objectives of rehabilitation. The ultimate objective is to protect their childhood and ensure their rights as a child. According to the CRC, best interest of the child is recognized. After the rehabilitation, they are not child soldiers or child combatants. They are children. Therefore, it is important to ensure the most protective environment for all children. During the armed conflict, it helps to prevent the recruitment of war-affected children as child soldiers. Even Sri Lanka also had taken several steps to rehabilitate child soldiers during the period of ceasefire agreement between government of Sri Lanka and LTTE. But today, rehabilitation of child soldiers is important to reintegrate them into society as productive citizens. Because now we are in a post-conflict situation. Therefore, we should pay our attention much towards this objective. The rehabilitation process is aimed at facilitating a change in thinking and successfully reintegrating them, the former LTT cadres, into the community. It is vital that the beneficiaries within the rehabilitation centers experience a shift in thinking away from the narrow hate-filled ideology targeted towards the majority. It is aimed at helping cadres to become champions of the peace. All detainees would wish to release, it's true, but rehabilitation must come first because recondition and reset of their minds is very important. Then I would like to discuss the present scenario. When we are concerning the present scenario on rehabilitation of child soldiers process in Sri Lanka, the special gazette issued by the President of Sri Lanka in 2009 on child rehabilitation was based on the Convention of the Rights of the Child and the Paris Principles. Sri Lanka is very much concerned about adopting the principles of restorative justice, not retributive justice. It is very important. These children were placed institutional rehabilitation at first. Then they received access to education, vocational training, health care and psychosocial support. As I mentioned earlier, first they have to be subjected to institutional rehabilitation and then they have to be subjected to community-based rehabilitation. Surrender were given full medical attention and cured before they were given vocational training. The detainees were categorized by law enforcement agencies in Sri Lanka based on their depth of involvement and the period of involvement and activities conducted during the involvement as high, low and medium risk categories. Commenting on the nature of the rehabilitation program in Sri Lanka, it is indeed comprehensive and covered many areas such as educational rehabilitation, vocational rehabilitation, spiritual rehabilitation, recreational rehabilitation, psychological rehabilitation, creative arts rehabilitation, and family and community-based rehabilitation. In here, I have cited some reflections on rehabilitation process. Actually, I would like to say something on these data because this is a limitation of my research. I couldn't find many statistics relating to rehabilitation. In here, altogether approximately 12,000 cadres were surrendered at the end of the conflict. As a part of educational rehabilitation, 293 child combatants were given to the opportunity to continue with their formal education in the college in Colombo with the cooperation of Ministry of Higher Education. And 35 children have returned to Hindu College in Colombo to continue their junior and senior high school education. Actually, the catch-up education program is very comprehensive to continue their formal education. In 2011, very recent, 302 students were sitting their A-levels exams. In my presentation, I would like to stress education as a key factor that need to be addressed properly in post-conflict situation. These steps are very important to achieve this target. Because health, education and psychosocial needs must be core of all rehabilitation programs in the world. Concerning on vocational training, the Federation of Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as a part of their social responsibility, launched a cheer project providing LTTE youth with the vocational training of their choice in the construction industry. And 240 males followed a vocational training program on welding, carpentry, electrical wiring and masonry. And 60 females were completed to that program. The training was consisted, according to data that I was getting 100 hours with theory and practice. It's very important for uplifting their livelihood. It's very important for the purpose of economic reintegration. The spiritual rehabilitation is helpful to reset their minds as civilians, because as a children, however, they are vulnerable. But as child soldiers, they are more vulnerable than others. Therefore, cultural and religious activities are important to achieve this purpose. This is the important part in my presentation. What are the existing challenges in rehabilitation program in Sri Lanka? I have divided in to three categories like normative challenges, practical challenges and implementation challenges. Under normative challenges, first I would like to discuss what is the existing law and practice with relating to child soldiers. The Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989 provides provision in relation to children's participation in hostilities. Article 38 of the CRC stated that state parties shall take all feasible measures to ensure that persons who have not attained the age of 15 years do not take direct part in hostilities. Although in this article the age of requirement for military is 15 years. But the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the involvement in armed conflict has explicitly provided that the minimum age of children regarding recruitment as child soldiers is 18 years. Furthermore, the additional protocol of 1977 to the 4 Geneva Conventions provides that children under 15 should never participate in armed conflict. Additional protocol 1 prohibits the recruitment of children for participation in direct hostilities in international conflict. The protocol 2 prohibits of non-international conflict from being recruited or allowed to participate directly or indirectly in hostilities, including voluntary enlistment. In addition, some international conventions have addressed this issue indirectly. The International Labour Organization Convention number 182 on the prohibition and immediate action for the elimination of worst forms of child labour define forced and compulsory recruitment of children in armed conflict as one of the worst forms of child labour. In Rome Statute of International Criminal Court in 1998, states that it has the jurisdiction to prosecute the war crime of conscripting or enlisting of children under 15 years into national armed forces or armed groups, as well as the use of children to participate actively in hostilities in both international and non-international conflict. Further, it has mentioned that rape, sexual slavery and other forms of sexual violence perpetrated in non-international wars can be considered war crimes and prosecuted in the ICC. When we are carefully examining all these international standards, Sri Lanka has ratified many of these conventions. Someone can argue that as a dualist country, because Sri Lanka is considered as a dualist country, there is no validity of ratification because enacting and enabling legislation is essential. But for the purpose of the fulfillment of international obligation, domestic law has provided some provisions in relation to children in armed conflict. The Charter of the Rights of the Child in 1992 in Sri Lanka has incorporated the Child Rights Convention's standards with regard to protection of children in armed conflict. In addition to the Charter, the Penal Code Amendment Act number 16 of 2006 specifically introduced to prohibit the child recruitment. Army, Navy and Air Force Acts prescribe the age limit of recruitment into the national armed forces. Then all these factors are tacitly accepted that there is no such a normative gap. Existing law is enough for addressing this problem. However, as a developing country, as a third world country, we have some challenges at the practical and implementation stage. Because Sri Lanka managed this process with its limited resources and with the effective partnership of UNICEF. Therefore, it is necessary to focus our attention towards these challenges. Institutional structure is one of the challenges because there should be a good coordination among relevant ministries and other institutions. Ministry of Rehabilitation and Resettlement, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Economic Development and Ministry of Health, such ministries should be responsible on this process. For effective rehabilitation program, we should have trained human resources. And in addition, concerning on Sri Lanka, we have financial and infrastructure difficulties. It leads to ineffective coordination among these institutions. Another challenge is lack of awareness of the stakeholders. After rehabilitation process, they are reintegrating to the society as children. But there is a social stigma among others. They are as child soldiers. So, external environment should be ready to receive them as civilians. Build up awareness among relevant stakeholders play an important role in this context. For that purpose, community and grassroots organizations should try to raise awareness and promote behavioral changes at the family and community level to end the social stigma and discrimination that survivors face. I would like to come to my conclusion. Before conclusion, I would like to give some recommendations for more effective rehabilitation process in Sri Lanka. Actually, present process is effective. That's why I use the word more effective. 2 years after the end of the conflict, Sri Lanka has achieved objectives of rehabilitation of child soldiers successfully. But according to my research, I am unable to find any special consideration on female child soldiers. The specific reference to female child soldiers should be recognized because the LTT had even restored to forced pregnancies of girls who subsequently had been commandeered to serve the LTTE. In Sierra Leone, there was a special project established to identify and assist